My mother's history of stubbornness and coercion. A 32-year-old male, mother has forced me into situations I didn't want to be in during my childhood. Sometimes it was just embarrassing, making me ride the kiddie train at a garden center when I was 12-13 and no longer thought it was cool to ride them. Simply because I had been watching it, so therefore I must have wanted to ride it. But other times have been less embarrassing and bordering on abuse. Maybe one of those times was abuse. The main examples I can think of are mostly centered around food. Maybe she thought she was helping me to broaden my palate, but most of the time I just ended up resenting the food she was forcing me to eat. Maybe she was just plain old stubborn. I should note here that I was diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum in 2002, specifically Asperger's, not Asperger's. So there's probably been a few times when she thought I was just being a picky eater, but it was my autism saying no. The first incident happened when I was about 3 years old. I don't remember it myself, but I've been told about it by my dad who was there. My mom had bought some salted haddock for lunch dinner, however it was way too salty. My dad struggled with it too, but he was polite about it and kept quiet. I, on the other hand, was rather vocal about my distaste for it. Mum wouldn't listen to me, and she began to shovel forkfuls of the haddock into my mouth, even though I wasn't swallowing it. Eventually, my mouth couldn't hold anymore, and it came back out and onto the plate and table. It was then that my dad finally spoke up and told my mum that the fish was far too salty, especially for a 3-year-old. And you know what my mum said in return? She thought it was too salty as well. I wasn't being picky, but clearly the best course of action was to force-feed me it anyway. Now she had a crying 3-year-old on her hands, crying because of what she did. The next time was about a year before my formal Asperger's diagnosis. I loved orange juice as a little boy, and then one day my mum gave me orange juice with pulp in it. It tasted the same, but the texture, that was one party in my mouth that I didn't expect or want. I instantly expressed my dislike of it, only to be met with a response similar to "It's still orange juice, you'll get used to it." I did not get used to it. This wouldn't be the last time she gave me that vile stuff, but eventually she finally seemed to realize that I genuinely didn't like it, and I never had to drink it again. A few years later, it was a tomato, as in the actual fruit. I'm not sure if this is an autism thing or just a kid thing in general, but the moment I first saw a sliced tomato, and the juices that came out of the toasted sandwiches my dad used to eat, I decided I didn't like them. I never actually ate a tomato until this point. I'd eaten plenty of tomato flavor or tomato-based products, but the fruit itself was a no-go. My mom had been gradually introducing cold salads to the family meals, typically lettuce, cucumbers, and carrots. She had successfully got me to start eating mushrooms, another food I had decided to not like without eating, so she probably thought she could strike gold twice by putting an entire tomato on my plate. It wasn't a small cherry tomato, but it wasn't a massive one either. It was probably just an average salad tomato, but I remember it being huge. I ate everything else on the plate and left the tomato alone, and she wouldn't let me leave the dinner table until it was gone. I did eventually eat it, and I hated every second, and she just told me I should have eaten it with everything else. I think that was in 2006. I didn't eat any tomato again for about 10 years. Now you might be wondering that this doesn't sound particularly bad right now, just the sort of things children go through. But this next incident is something I still have deep resentment and anger about. I don't remember exactly when this happened. It could have been 2006 or even 2010. All I remember is it was around Christmas, before or after. My mum baked all kinds of cakes. She would make elaborate birthday cakes, doing her best to make them look like what me or my older sister wanted. She made a cake that looked like a parrot for my sister. For me, she made cakes that looked like Thomas the Tank Engine characters or Shunt from Robot Wars. They weren't exactly works of art, but we were always stoked to see them. Her Christmas cakes were not one of them, at least in my opinion. Frankly, I couldn't stand the smell, so I never wanted to eat any. The smell was enough for my autistic brain to say nope. And this isn't isolated to just me. If you don't like the smell of something, chances are you won't like the taste either. Usually my mom would acknowledge this and let me eat something else whenever it got served for dessert. But not on this occasion. For whatever reason, after the family dinner one day, she broke out the Christmas cake and cut everyone a slice. I of course said no thank you, but she gave me a small slice anyway and told me, "You haven't tried it, you might like it." My nose was telling me I wouldn't. I ate the icing off the slice, but I refused to eat the cake itself. Eventually, I did eat a small piece, and predictably, I hated the taste. I think I even gagged. When I repeatedly asked to leave the table, that's when my mother, and possibly my stepfather too, gave me the ultimatum. If you don't eat it now, you're going to have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner until it's finished. And they followed up on that. I suppose I should be grateful she didn't mean the entire rest of the cake, just that slice. She packed it into a plastic Tupperware box and let me leave the table. But when I came downstairs the next morning for breakfast, my breakfast cereal was gone, and so was the bread, so I couldn't make toast. My mom pulled that fluffing slice of cake out of its box and placed it in front of me. She wasn't taking no for an answer, despite the multiple times I had told her I didn't like it and didn't want to eat it. I didn't eat anything for breakfast that day, except maybe for a small piece of that vile cake. By the time lunchtime rolled around, I was pretty hungry, only to be forced to sit at the dinner table again with that fluffing slice of cake in front of me again. I think at this point I was crying, begging my mother to stop punishing me for not eating something I didn't like. It's like the corrupted version of that Reddit post by a dad who teaches his daughter a lesson by serving her favorite food for every meal. A lesson that good things are best enjoyed every so often. My situation just felt like cruelty for the sake of being cruel. Maybe one day I'll ask my mother why she did this to me. Eventually, I think she relented and finally let me eat some actual food for lunch. But if her goal was to get me to like Christmas cake, her plan backfired massively. I already didn't like Christmas cake before that, but now, if I could, I'd take the entire world's supply of it and shoot it into the sun. I don't just hate the stuff, I despise it. Every time I smell it, I'm back in that chair, staring at that slice of cake on a blue plate. These last two incidents are not around food, but the education of me and my older sister during our GSCEs, the final exams you get at the end of your time in British high school. Yes, my sister wasn't free from my mother's stubbornness either. My sister may have been doing her A-levels instead, but that's not important. My sister hated science classes. It was her weakest subject, so when she had to complete coursework for her mandatory science exams, she did that first so she could get on to doing the project she actually wanted to do. Art. She had a plan for her art coursework, which if I remember correctly, she had to paint a picture at home, so she had bought tons of art supplies. Mother Dearest single-handedly caused my sister to fail her art class. She got it into her head that my sister was simply refusing to do her science homework and refused to believe her when she was told it was already finished. Mother confiscated all of my sister's art supplies and gave her various science books to study from, which of course were completely useless at that point. Sister was unable to do her art project. She couldn't even draw with a pencil on paper. Mother did eventually return the art supplies, but by then it was too late. There was not enough time left for sister to complete her project, and her grades suffered a lot. This was the opening of a rift between mother and sister that still hasn't healed. I think mother still believes she did nothing wrong. For me, my education incident happened roughly in May 2011, and for this one I admit I was being stubborn too. All of my classes by that point were basically reduced to revision classes. At some point prior to that, my class had taken the maths exam. Maths was my weakest subject, so I was happy to receive a passing C grade. The maths teachers all felt differently, however. They corralled the entire year group into a single classroom and told us they believed we had all underperformed. Therefore, they were suggesting the entire year group take the resit exam. Some of the other students willingly retook the exam, but me, was I capable of getting a B? Maybe, but I was in no hurry to find out. Like my sister with her science work, I had washed my hands of the maths. But Mother Dearest stepped in again. Apparently the word suggest means by force in her dictionary because she signed me up for the resit. She even signed me up for a Saturday revision session at the school, even though I was again telling her no repeatedly. At the time, I had recently joined the local Air Cadets squadron, as in I didn't even have the proper Air Cadets uniform yet. My mom hung this over my head, threatening to stop taking me if I didn't attend the Saturday class. Significant other, I let her drive me to the school. And as soon as I watched her drive away, I began walking to the train station and calling a friend to see if I could spend the day with them. But Mother anticipated this. She never left. She just parked around the corner and waited for me to walk past her parking spot to the train station. As punishment, she took me back home and made me do chores. I mean, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to revise for the maths exam you're forcing me to do when I'm vacuuming the stairs, but okay. But yeah, no more Air Cadets after that. I probably wasn't going to fit in anyway. Even the school faculty was in on it, making sure I was revising. And when exam day came, I was escorted by the school resource officer from the bus to the canteen and then into the exam hall. But they all forgot one crucial thing. You can lead still guns to the exam hall, force him to study and revise. But you cannot actually make still guns do the exam properly. I hope the person who graded my resit paper enjoyed my little drawings of diggers and giraffes and pointing out the letter X on the triangles. You know, find X because I already had a C grade. It wasn't overwritten by the U grade I got for the resit. U means ungraded. You sucked so hard, you didn't even get a grade. It's one of the few times I managed to stand up for myself and get one over my mum, even if she thought she was doing what she thought was best for me. Drop your verdict in the comments. Wait, what?